This is Thursday, March 13th, 2014. I'm Beth Finch, and I'm here with Roy Jones, and we're in his office, one room of his many-roomed office.
That is
so,
correct.
Roy, just tell me briefly, where were you born? When did you come to Brewster? And we'll start right there.
Well, that's going to be a long story.
Well, that's just two facts so far.
Well, I was born in South Weymouth Hospital.
Okay.
In Weymouth when my parents were living in Hingham, but my grandmother had owned property on the Cape, and my mother had been here almost all her life summers. And since I was born in April, by May I was down here in Brewster for the summer. So I've summered here. I summered here right up through 1953 when my parents, mom and dad, moved us back here from Shenango Bridge, New York. And from 1953 on, I've lived in Brewster.
Tell me something about your family. I know that your family's roots go way back in the town.
Yes, in fact, that's our relative's chair on the emblem or the seal of the town.
Really?
Yes, we are related to William Brewster. My mother spent a lot of time, and the Eddies also were members of the Mayflower Society. So that is a real tie. And we also related to Captain David Nickerson, who has quite a history. And somebody's coming in the door. You'll have to edit this. We'll find out who it is. We're also in the 1870s. As I said, I believe it's our great-great-great-grandfather, Frederick Nickerson, owned the manse. And I have a picture of the manse dated 1876, painted from the position of the Baptist church, the yard of the Baptist church, looking across the street and seeing all the way to Cape Cod Bay across Cobb's Pond.
Well, that proves the stories we've heard, that you could see the bay from many places in town.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can. Well, like the pictures exist of playing baseball around Cobb's Pond. So there are a lot of things that people, I'll make an editorial comment, want to preserve that weren't here historically. So
At what point in history?
At what point in history do you want to preserve? And that's
right.
always been my argument.
Yep.
And I've been very vocal sometimes about that. But continuing, so
now, I thought the manse was the home of the pastor of the Baptist church.
Not to my knowledge ever.
So it was
no.
just called the manse.
It was just called the manse. Well, the reason it was called the manse is because at some point in time, Frederick sold it. Now, Frederick was the treasurer for the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. He was based in Boston, and I don't know at what point, and Di and Steve can look it up, that it was the house was transferred. The reason it was called the manse in my lifetime is because the Di, he's a plumber, and the family lived in the manse. They were Lutherans, and if you notice, there's a house on Lower Road called the manse.
Yes.
And that was where those people, and it'll dawn on me one of these minutes.
Not Latham.
No. We'll come up with it.
Right.
But anyway, that family lived in that house, and they were as I understand it, they were the stalwart Lutheran people in the town. There was a lady who had a daughter, and maybe that's her son, who sadly enough died very young in that house. But that's a history. In the meantime, the question keeps coming up: how are we related to the Eddies?
Yes.
Mary Louise and Ruth Eddy are technically our second cousins. They're first cousins to my late mom and Larry Houghton's late mom. And Larry Houghton and I and Steve and Di are all related. because
Okay.
he's a cousin to me and Steve. And they were, if you follow the line back, they were out of the Thorndike line, which actually goes back and then crosses with the Nickerson line. So I'm giving you a quick summary, and Di, you can fix it. Call Larry and fix it. Larry Houghton is the
The family genealogist.
family genealogist. He's the one that's got it all
Okay.
down pat. So that's how we're related. So actually, yeah, Grammy and the Eddies were first cousins, I believe.
So what was your grandmother's birth name?
She was Priscilla Lawrence.
Right.
It's Priscilla and Lawrence. She's Priscilla Nickerson Lawrence. So, and through the Nickerson family, they owned a cottage in Brewster Park back in the 30s. And my mother spent a couple of her summers as a sailing instructor at Camp Watona. Now, the $64 question to everybody in Brewster is, where was Camp Watona? And part of it is now, oh, crap.
Kings Grant.
Di, what's her name?
Kings Grant.
Kings Grant or
Crocker.
Crocker, yeah. Louise.
Oh, okay. Crocker Lane?
Crocker Lane. That was not the road to go in. The road to go in actually was initially over right next to the restaurant there.
Bramble Inn.
Bramble Inn. Thank you. So
there are roads that have disappeared too.
Oh yes. Oh, definitely. The community house or main house is a rebuilt house down there, I believe.
In Brewster Park?
No. In Kings Grant.
Oh.
Yeah, I think one of the houses is the main house rebuilt. My grandmother purchased one of the camp buildings, and it stands behind my cousin Larry's house right now, because my mother wanted the one that she had stayed in all summer, but they couldn't get that one, and they got another one, and I had the name a few minutes ago, and I'll think of it, but of the cottage or the camp that she lived in. That brings us up to the fact that summering here as kids, first we would stay sometimes at Grammy's house, which is 11 Center Street.
Okay.
And has been rebuilt, but was a house that was built on a foundation for replacing a house that was burned down, or that burned down in, I think Larry's come up with 1911 or 1912.
Oh my goodness.
And our uncle, Howard Nickerson, bought the property and built the house that's there, the basic house that's there now, and Grammy added on to it about 1951 as she was preparing to move down here from Hingham permanently. So they had the house that they'd owned on the bluff, where what we call Sandy Shoals today, had blown away in the 47 hurricane. And they evidently financially, for some reason, they sold it, but they also had bought what we call the Red Cottage, which is the gambrel sitting on the property right behind. And that house is either the oldest or second oldest house in Brewster Park on its original foundation.
Oh my goodness.
And that house is still owned by Di's husband Stephen and my brother David until it falls down around them. But that was our summer abode every year, from the word go.
Tell me what Brewster Park was like when you were a child. How was it different from the Brewster Park we know today?
Well, the roads weren't paved.
Okay.
The the tennis courts were clay. The friendship and we had dances to nicely 45 RPM records.
So we're talking about what, mid-50s here?
We're talking mid-50s into the 60s.
Okay.
And early mid-50s, the roads were a mix, an oil mix. They weren't really paved. They were paved over the years. The friendship is one of the most unique things about Brewster Park, in that I have 3 friends that basically I grew up with in Brewster Park summers. 2 of them now live here in Brewster permanently, and it's like you knew kids in school, but you put them aside in the summertime and went to the summertime kids. And the summertime kids, you built the relations during the summertime, and without the computers and tweeting and twatting and everything else, that was the end of when Labor Day came and Howie Graham left or David Harwood left. That was the end of the summer. And until maybe, the Harwoods always showed up around Memorial Day, but the Grahams, it was usually mid-June, and then the Paulsons the 1st of July. And those 3 people, John Paulson, Howard Graham, who lives here in town, and David Harwood lives here in town, are my longest really continuous friends, and it was because of Brewster Park. And we did a lot of things together. I mean, you could ride bikes, you could walk to Donald Doan's, you could go out on the flats. The park has always had a recreation program for young people, and that meant, when we were real young, that meant a Wednesday night party, which was small games, and then as we grew up, there was a dance for us younger people, and as we aged, and there were older kids then, there was an older dance. The first dance started at 7:30 or 8, got done at 9, and the older kids came in 9 to 11 or 9 to 10:30, and eventually we were the older kids. Friday night was movie night, so you always went to the community house for the movies and watched Abbott and Costello or William Bendix in Kill the Umpire. Kill the Umpire is a good movie.
Okay.
Oh, fantastic.
So once you got there, once summer came, did you pretty much spend your time in Brewster Park? You didn't go out into the rest of the world a lot?
Well, there really wasn't a lot of rest of the world. For us as young kids, we were limited by where we could go on bicycle, or even if we didn't have bicycle, walking to Doan's was really, or to Mears's, were where you went.
What's Muses?
Mears's is a store. It was basically a small grocery store on the west end of Lower Road, and they had a gas station there. And the owners, I don't know that they owned the property, but the owners of the shop lived in Brewster Park.
Oh.
So you could walk down that way, or ride your bike down that way, or ride up to Doan's. There really wasn't. You didn't stop and think. Occasionally, you might go to Orleans, and if it was Orleans, it might be Snow's. Mm-hmm. The old Snow's.
The old Snow's.
So as we got older, we would ride up to Sheep's Pond when the tide was out. In the span of time between, say, 11 or 12 and 16, so we didn't have licenses, that was the time that those kind of things were done. And because if there was no tide, and most of us weren't working, although I started working at 14, but with any free time, we'd get together, we'd ride up to Sheep's Pond, and Sheep's Pond didn't have a real good access, so it was walk in through the woods almost.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. It was a dirt road.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, dirt path, and it wasn't till
So the parking lot and the boat landing that we know were not there.
Oh no.
But is that the beach you went to?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So.
So what about boats? Did Brewster Park have lessons in swimming or lessons in boating?
Oh my Lord, we had everything. We had the park has for I'm going to say back before the war, meaning World War II, hired they call him a coach, an overseer of recreation, and even back before the war, they offered swimming lessons. There was a diving stand. Di's got the picture. A diving stand in Brewster Park. There have always been rafts, and so you could swim out to the rafts. You did your swimming lessons. In fact, you had to be approved by the coach before you could swim to certain rafts. You know, so you were under the gun to learn and everything. We had what are called tugboats.
Yeah.
which is a blunt-ended boat about no more than probably 5 feet long, just room enough. Well, you could put 2 or 3 people in it, but you'd almost sink. You sat in the middle. You had a double-handed paddle, and you could go like heck with it. They were made. Some people made their own. The place down in West Brewster that's now an antique shop.
Packet?
No. Well, Packet Landing was up on Stony Brook Road.
Yeah, you're right.
So, no, this place is now I don't know whether they're even doing antiques anymore. It's right next to the creek on 6A. Looks like a barn on the right-hand side.
Yeah, it used to be the West Brewster Liquor Store.
Oh, no. West Brewster Liquor Store.
Different place.
Is different place. This is, and you're not thinking of the right creek. When you come around the corner by Dillingham Road,
yeah.
a.k.a. A. Percy Newcomb Road. They stole his name.
Yeah.
And the reason it's called Dillingham Road, because the Dillingham house is across the street.
Right.
And there's another Dillingham house down around on the intersection of Stony Brook and A.P. Newcomb now.
The little one?
The little one was a Dillingham too, I believe.
Okay.
So, but anyway, go around that corner, start down the hill, and there's a creek right there that empties the bogs and everything.
Yeah.
Right next to that is a barn-type building. He'd made tugboats for years, for quite a few years. Plus, my mother always taught us how to sail. We had 2 small boats, almost dinghy style, but at first, Mom would put us on a lead and be yelling at us as we sailed. She could pull us in, and then once we'd learned how to sail, we could take the boat and go.
Those tugboats have a more ancient history. Ruth Eddy told me that they, as children, had something that sounds very similar, and that there was a man in Brewster Park who made them, but they were small, they were blunt at both ends.
Okay, there could be, oh, great. Di's going to have to look the name up. There was a gentleman growing up in Brewster Park, when I was growing up, who was really a maintenance man for a lot of people and a lot of things. And it could have been him that was the builder, although Ruth may be going farther back than that.
Because she was a child and she talked about doing these.
Oh yeah, it was a great way to, and there are pictures of the tugboat races.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and it's going back to the waterfront. The waterfront, you had beach hours during high tides, when you knew that the coach was on the beach. The beach is marked off with buoys, and every year the big thing was to put the rafts in and put the markers out and then bring them in at the end of the summer. The coach set up each July and each August we'd have a swimming day, so to speak, and they'd have watermelon race, swimming races, tugboat race, all of those things, and everybody would get ribbon. Any of the first 3 would get ribbons and the same thing. We would have in the park, and they would be done twice a year. And the reason done that way is because a lot of people came in July, and that's all they were here for.
Oh, really?
The renter was usually a 2-week, 3-week, or month, or all summer. There was no such thing as a 1-week renter back then.
So there were a lot of renters.
There were a lot of renters, yes. The Harwoods were renters. The Paulsons were renters. And technically, the Grahams were renters because he was eventually consistently provided a summer house to stay in while he was here. And Howie's dad was the coach from about, I'm going to say at least 1945 and maybe back before then. I get the book out, will you?
Well, now, how is that different from today? What does Brewster Park have? All of these activities for
I
kids
think
today?
they have a lot of them today. They've had to modify them because some of the things that we did don't interest kids so much today. But they have a field day, which I was starting to get into. Is that every month, July and August, we'd have a field day, which would mean how far you could throw the ball, races, all those types of things. And they still do a lot of that stuff today.
Oh, that's
And they
nice.
still do the beach stuff, but in maybe a little different format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because to keep the kids interested.
Now, some of these families and buildings go back long time before you were there.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Red Cottage dates to at least 1902 and maybe before that. The other house, which I'll call the Ramsey House, dates to about the same time. The Paulson House was a fish house, which was down on the beach and moved up to where it presently is on Graham Road. And I don't know that anybody's ever fully dated that. There is a picture, a common Brewster Park picture, that I think shows it sitting on the beach. So.
Well, that makes me think. We all know the shore is eroding. What differences can you think of in your lifetime?
Tremendously. In that there used to be between what we call the Sun House, which is the way we go down to the beach, there was at least probably 100 feet plus to before you got to where the bluff was.
Is that the little gazebo?
Yeah, it's a little gazebo. That's the
100 feet of bluff in front of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because you used to go down, walk a boardwalk, easily, I'm going to say 75 feet before you hit the usable beach, because we used to bring the rafts up and come up where the Sun House is, go to the right and store them there. So the rafts were all stored right on the beach, so to speak, but well back from any water.
Well, there are many houses that are right on the bluff now or very close. Were there houses in front of them in years past? No. So people knew enough to build
the
far
houses, basically the bluffs, the big bluffs today define where there were houses.
Yeah. Interesting.
And the only time you get anything different would be the Eddie's bathhouse.
Right.
So down on the other end.
That's interesting. People sort of knew enough not to build right at the edge.
Well, because if you look at the land lay, or the lay of the land, you don't have solid ground until you get to the bluffs.
Oh, okay.
And you always had beach extending out front. I think I've got some pictures of them building the jetties, which you may be able to see looking at the picture, and I'm not sure. Some of the pictures, the distance between where the trucks hit, say, the beach, and how far out they had to go before they got to the flats where they drove on, then drove on the flats. So it's amazing. Now you asked the question about Brewster and what else I did, and I've given you a summary. But starting in the second grade, where I started in the second grade, in the building that is now the town hall, my teacher was Mrs. Hooper, and her husband at that time, I'm not sure he was yet the director or the head of Nixon State Park. His brother, Fred Hooper, was always his assistant, and Fred was on the fire department from 1941, and was, when I took over the fire department in 1981, was my deputy fire chief. And I have a wonderful picture of him here, but I haven't got everything up yet.
When you were, when you started second grade, how many grades were in that building?
8. There are 8 grades in the building, and at that time, everybody in high school went to Orleans High School.
Didn't have a choice of D1?
At that time, you didn't have a choice. I don't know the time that the choice began, but I would say probably right after that.
Okay.
And then for quite a while, most of us were choosing DY. But let's go back to elementary school.
All right.
Because that really is something to look at. And you have a school with 8 grades in it. You have young people, children, we're all growing up together. We're learning to compete together. We're learning discipline, and just getting to know the world and getting to know each other. And our world was not as wide as it is today. And I look at my grandchildren and how wide their world is compared to what mine was, and what we were learning and how we learned.
When you're saying not as wide, do you mean that geographically you pretty much stayed in Brewster, or do you mean you weren't as aware?
You weren't as aware. Yeah. I mean, there was no television. I used to listen to the Celtics, and well, even before that, I listened to the Lone Ranger on the radio. So there was no television that gave you this. Radio gave you some breadth. I mean, yeah, we'd go to Orleans. I went to Boston to a ball game or two. So it wasn't, but that was a longer ride than it is today. No, I think yes, geographically, young people have a wider world. It's nothing for somebody to, a 10-year-old to go to Hyannis.
Right. It's not special.
It's not special.
Yeah.
But I've always felt fondly of my elementary school years, and Mrs. Keith was my 3rd grade teacher. 4th grade was Isabel Stone, who's still alive. She was just recently. Then Lillian Callahan, whose husband owned Callahan Insurance, was my 5th grade teacher, and I have to give her a lot of credit, because between Isabel Stone, who got me willing to write book reports and to read, and Lillian, who really pushed me to read, they can be thanked for all the books you see around here. Used to spend a lot of time at the library.
I was going to ask you, was the library part of your life?
Yes, library was very much part of my life. You'd already asked me about Grammy, and yes, she, in the 50s, was extremely active in keeping the library going. And that was one place that we could walk to, and especially as I got older, and I'm going to be, say, 7th and 8th grade, and I got more and more interested in Civil War history, and was doing a lot more studying about history in itself. And I was very surprised the day that on the giveaway shelf at the library were Grant's memoirs.
Oh my goodness.
In the green bound books.
Oh no.
So I snapped them up.
All right. And you still have them?
And I still have them, yes. No, I don't have them here. They're in my bookshelf at home. So
giveaway.
A giveaway. Well, I'm going to interject another funny story here, because I do collect quite a few books. there was a gentleman whose son, by the name of Brooks, who was a teacher at Nauset, or actually Orleans High School, and S. Stewart Brooks. He, I think he was a Latin teacher. His daughter and my wife were very good friends. Well, his father, during the 30s, under one of the programs, wrote 2 books, Lee of Virginia and Grant of Appomattox. I was hunting for those books one day down in Gettysburg, and I spent a lot of time down there, and this was back, in the 90s. And I went into one of the bookstores that I usually went into, and I was going through, and there is Grant of Appomattox. I open it up, and it says, property of Brewster Ladies Library. Now, you want something funny. That really, I go, what? So I went and asked. I'd been in enough so I knew the owner fairly, at least to talk to. And I said, where did you get this book? I said, this is my hometown up on Cape Cod. He says, well, it might have, because he had no way really to tell. I found the Grant of Appomattox in Gettysburg.
That's so
with
funny.
The Brewster Ladies. I should have brought it over to show you. Next time I'll have it with me. Anyway, so between that and then learning sports with a small.
Well, let me stop you just a minute. Did the school have a library, or was most of your research?
No,
work
most
done
everything had to be done at the library.
Okay.
There was really no. I think there was some Britannicas in the hallway there, which eventually they started to build a library in the main hallway, but no, there was no real. Each classroom had some books. The 5th grade classroom had the Landmark series and was building on that. So I was reading most of the Landmark series.
Yeah, that was set up for you, wasn't it?
And with Mrs. Callahan beating on me, that worked real well, and I began to enjoy reading. So, Di, what are you looking like?
That's the way you put it.
That really got me interested in reading and doing more and more. So, the 6th grade, when you got to the 6th grade, you had 3 teachers. The 6th grade was what is now the town clerk's office.
Oh,
in
okay.
Brewster. 7th grade is where the assessor's office was, and 8th grade is where the secretary is. Charlie's office was the principal's office.
What was the one at the far end that is Conservation and Planning Board?
Conservation and Planning Board is 1st grade.
Oh, really?
That is an addition that was put on approximately 1950, when the town, which hasn't seemed to change much at all, didn't want to spend the money to put a full gym in the basement and made it an auditorium, so you couldn't play basketball. Well, we finally got baskets put up, but you had to shoot real low and they weren't regulation height. And it may also have been because they hit water, because that's lowland right there. But the story goes that they wouldn't spend the money to put a full gym in. But anyway, those 3 classrooms, the third grade was health, or is health now. 2nd grade is building department. 1st grade is, because those were added because the classes had been combined up until the addition.
Oh, so there was one room that was 1st, 2nd, 3rd.
I believe there was, yeah. Now that you can go back. I'm trying to think of who's alive now that can tell you.
Yeah, it's tough.
Well, Sandy Tubman may be able to. Young female, Sandra.
Yeah.
She probably can tell you, because she's that far enough ahead of me. So,
Okay.
But 6th grade, you had 3 rotating teachers. You had your homeroom teacher, and then you had 2 other teachers that basically rotated in and out, doing the various subjects.
So you had real specialists.
Well, I wouldn't call them real specialists. I mean, they
Okay.
knew what they were doing. We had Mrs. Dunn, and I think her first name was Elizabeth, whose husband was the principal over at Baker Elementary, and she was a taskmaster. She was English, and then we rotated our math, and let's see, I think I had Ozzie Burris for 1 year.
He was the principal.
He was the principal. See, the principal also taught.
Okay.
Principal also taught. And the third teacher, the one that sticks in my mind, was a Mr. Very, who was a former Marine who had come out of Korea, gone to school, and was teaching. And he was a wonderful disciplinarian. He could hit you with a softball from his desk without even moving. And he knew how to use the ruler so it didn't make any marks on you. So,
different days.
different days, and I believe in them. I didn't suffer one bit from what those teachers did for me, and what they brought along. So, I guess about that time, Mr. Fletcher, and I'm going to say James, but it may not be. Fletcher became the principal, and he lived over behind the house that's behind Williams Garage, the mobile station.
The mobile station.
He rented that, and he was principal. I think he was there for 4 years, 3 or 4 years. You'll have to check and in his homeroom was the office right next to the principal's office. So,
what did you do after school?
well, sports.
Mm-hmm.
Brewster always had from the 4th grade up. They tried to work with you with sports. Soccer was just coming into play.
Oh, really?
We couldn't play basketball, but we could play basketball. We could play basketball with the kids over in Dennis. So on Saturdays you could go over there and play. But baseball was the real thing, learning baseball. And then the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades comprised the baseball team, and we started playing the other schools. And I think it was my 7th grade year we finally had a soccer team. Because soccer was just becoming a sport to be interested in. We had a fall sport and a spring sport. If you wanted to play basketball, you had to go somewhere else. Most of us played Little League baseball in this late spring and early summer in Yarmouth. Played for it was a combined Brewster, Dennis, Yarmouth Little League. So that it was great when I went to high school. I already knew a bunch of the kids, the boys anyway, that I was going to school with.
Yeah.
Because we'd played together.
So you went to DY?
I went to DY.
Oh,
Yep.
I see. Okay.
Yep. And that's why there's a diploma on that wall.
Okay. No football.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. I played football. I played football for 3 years. I was a guard or a defensive linebacker.
okay.
Playing football. And then I did not play a winter sport, but I played baseball. I played 4 years worth of baseball at DY. Yep, my senior year we were the Cape champs.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So, and that was under Red Wilson. That's all right. But I think very fondly of the Brewster Elementary School.
Do you?
Because I think it gave a lot, it encouraged a lot, it drew, maybe just not me, but all of us, it drew us out.
Do you have any idea how many what the school population would have been at the elementary school?
Well, I can tell you there are only 10 in our class.
Okay. And that was about average?
No.
No.
No, because Stephen's class, I'll bet you had 23 or
Oh my
24 in it. David's, I think, had 18 or 19.
So you were just a small class.
We were all of a sudden a small. Jimmy Coogan's, Jimmy, no, but I'll bet they were like 12.
Yeah.
We were, for some reason, all of a sudden a small class, but still, you go back to Jimmy or Skip Daly, theirs were not very large, but there were only 5 boys and 5 girls, and one of the girls really didn't belong. Well, she came in, actually we started the year with 9, and she came in, she was staying with their aunt or something. Here.
If classes are so small, did they ever have split classes? Did you ever combine with another grade?
No.
No.
The people that had come along with us had either dropped off or stayed back. There were several people that I grew up with that didn't graduate with me.
Well, that's interesting word. Did most kids that started out finish high school?
I would say one way or the other, because the one I'm thinking about finished there was a Bristol, I think it was called Bristol Agricultural. There was not a tech school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a tech school, and he finished that. He finished there.
So there were the tech schools. There were no tech schools then.
There was a form of a tech school, but not the way you know them today.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of what it was called. I thought it was Bristol County Agricultural School.
But it was off Cape anyway.
It was off Cape. You had to go off Cape to go
But
to
it
school.
wasn't common for boys particularly maybe to stop and start working?
Not in my
apprenticeship kind of
Not
things
in my
at all?
era,
No.
no.
Yeah.
That would go
Okay.
back maybe a
Yeah,
little
right. I
farther.
just wondered.
Yeah.
'Cause
No. Most of everybody that I started high school with from Brewster finished high school.
Was it expected that a good many would go to college, or was that unusual?
Yes, I think by that time there was a very high expectation. In fact, they were measuring the success of the high schools by how many were going to college.
And what year did you graduate?
1963.
Okay.
So, and about that time, or just before that time, the option to go to Nauset or go to Orleans, and then it became Nauset.
Right.
And DY came along, and the majority of the kids seemed to be drawn. Well, at that time, I think they'd also started. They were playing Little League with Nauset, with Eastham Orleans, not with Yarmouth Dennis anymore.
Oh.
So I think there were a bunch of things that were drawing the young people that way. Although Stephen started at DY, my sister Kathy, who's behind Steve, went directly to Nauset.
Oh.
And because all her friends went.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was going on too.
Sure.
If a friend went, the other went.
Just for the record, tell us where the Orleans High School is.
Orleans High School sits at the corner of Eldridge Parkway and Route 28.
Where now?
Which is now the middle school.
Okay. Was
In the
DY
front,
in the same place as it is
Dennis
now?
Yarmouth Regional High School. We were the, I'm going to say, second full class or third full class to graduate from that building.
Wow.
The Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School would have been finished, I'm going to say it was finished in 58, whatever the numerical thing.
Yeah.
It was relatively new building. Relatively new building. So,
Nice.
I will tell you the story because it's historical. The sports rivalry between DY and Nauset began to really grow, and there was you think that the trading and bargaining goes on only in professional sports? Well, 2 of my classmates were solicited by the athletic director at Nauset to go play sports for them.
Did Nauset have a football team?
No, Nauset did not.
That's what I thought.
No, Nauset didn't have one until just recently.
Yeah.
But James Packett and Roland Linnell, who were basically, all three of us were on about a par sports-wise, were solicited by Nauset to go to Nauset, and they did.
They did. You
Yeah,
didn't.
but they didn't win the championship.
Okay,
So-
Roy, so you're a senior, you're a football player, you were on the winning team. Do you have a girlfriend?
Yeah, I had. I had several girlfriends. I mean, I've always had several girlfriends. That's not been a. I mean, that's
Hopefully not recently.
no, but starting in Brewster Park,
Mm.
you always had a girlfriend in the summertime, because you danced with her and
Sure.
held her
dances every
hand
week.
and
Yeah.
everything else. So, but then of course going to a degree in elementary school, but we didn't have the only socializing things we had in elementary school were primarily dance lessons.
Oh.
And I don't mean ballroom. I mean square dance.
Hmm.
And there was a total program put on. I believe it was the parent teachers group put it on, basically as a socializing
Sure.
thing. And it wasn't until they started the summer dances here in Brewster that you really saw some of the same people in the summertime that you saw in the wintertime.
The summer dances at Brewster Park.
No, summer
No.
dances at Brewster Elementary School.
Oh.
They started, I think I was in high school by then, because I almost think I had my license. So it would have been 1961,
Okay.
I think, that they started.
So you'd have dances down in the auditorium?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And Rolly Bassett would be the officer on duty to make sure nothing went wrong.
Records?
Records, yes. And just as we got to our senior year, Brewster never did it. Well, I'm jumping around. But also at DY, there were Friday night dances always at the West Dennis Community Center. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
where you went on a Friday night to dance, and that was records. But by our senior year, we were moving into the kids that could play guitars and things.
Yeah.
So you got more and more of that.
So
So-
you're traveling town to town now. Did you have a car?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
My grandmother had bought a Willys Jeep station wagon in 1951, and I purchased it from her in 1961. Learned to drive it, and that was my first car. Then I financed and bought that was the first car. Then the second car was a four-door sedan, which we think had been a police cruiser. Yes, and because it's summertime, I worked every summer. I started out working for my dad.
What
Yeah.
did your father do?
He ran Harwichport Hardware over in Harwichport.
Oh, okay.
And so I worked one summer working in his garden shop, which was right next door to the store, and then helping in the main store. I didn't really like it that much. So the next summer I went out on my own and did odd jobs. And the third summer I worked for Allen's Harbor Marine.
Oh.
And that takes us back to boats too. And so I could remind me, I've got stories I can tell you with that. And things you can't do today. We never got hurt
In boats.
in boats. But then in high school, I worked for the Dennis Water District,
Oh.
and learned to. Well, it was interesting. You learn to dig ditches, but you also learned how to put pipe together, to thread pipe, seal it, and all the physical things that young people don't learn today.
Yeah, useful things.
So, but the I'm trying to think of what I worked at Dennis Water District.
You didn't have jobs right in Brewster.
Pardon?
You didn't have jobs right in Brewster.
No, because there really wasn't. If you stop and think of Brewster in the 60s, there isn't anything really. The DPW didn't really hire anybody. There was no water department, so there were no summer jobs there. There was no real commercial. Well, no, I won't say that. No real commercial development. You had Donald Owens. Jimmy Packett always had a job at his dad's.
Right.
Roley always had a job there.
At the ice house.
No, Roley Linnell was one of Jimmy's best friends, so that he always worked at Packett's.
Again, let's just say, where was Packett's?
Well, originally Packett's was Foster's store in Foster Square.
Oh, really?
Then when Manny bought it, he then built the building where Brewster Farms is today.
Brewster Farms, right.
So, and then gradually built the cottages out back for rental income. And he also, for a long time, ran the contract school bus system. So, Jimmy's dad had a little bit of finger in everything. Yeah. So, but there was no, you could do camp counselor, but that kind of tied you up. So there really wasn't a lot.
Were there any farms in Brewster at the time?
Well, yes. The biggest farm is on Lund Farm Way. And that was Ole Lund's farm, who is his daughter is Anna Crocker, husband to Lawrence Crocker, who was in the insurance business.
Yep.
And that goes back to his dad, who was Henry Crocker, who owned Brewster Store at one time.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
But Ole, he had the farm, I'm going to say, for the longest time, because at first, well, he expanded. He had the cows right at the house, which is the Candleberry. What is it, Di? Candleberry Inn.
Right.
And out in the fields there, and he would, and we bought milk there. You'd go in. He always had a refrigerator sitting in the garage. You go in, take the milk out, drop the money in the bucket or in the dish, and that was it. Then he built the barn up on Lund Farm Way, cleared the fields. He always hayed where the town gardens are. He had an agreement with Mary Louise and Ruth to take that hay. He always hayed that. That's the only. Well, the other farm in Brewster, Stony Acres Farm. And you know where that is? Stony Acres Farm is where the Brewster Fish House is now.
Oh, really?
That building was built as a summer sales.
It sort of looks like that.
Sales thing. It was, yeah, exactly. A food and fruit stand, right, Di? It was built by Osborne Burrs, Ozzie Burrs, and Jim Daly. Now, Jim Daly was the Cushman man in the 1950s. The Cushman Bakery is out of, I think, Lynn or Lowell, and they had a truck, and he had the concession for this area. He'd go around. You didn't have to go to the store to buy bread or donuts or anything. Cushman's brought it to the door.
Yep.
And he knew what you wanted and would leave it if you were there or not. And Jim Daly was the first Cushman man I ever knew. They had great brownies. Fantastic brownies. They also they beat out Hostess. They probably were the original cupcake maker that had a chocolate frosting on a vanilla cupcake, but with a chocolate center. Really. But anyway, Jim and Ozzy basically were farmed. That whole area behind where the house is and everything, they farmed that. That was farmed, and the reason they called it Stony Acres is because when they cleared it, it was all stone. There was a lot of stone. Ozzy had a bunch of cranberry bogs, so one of the big things there in the fall was cranberries. And in fact, they had, in the $64 question is whatever happened to it, they had a cranberry sorting screening device there.
Right at the
Right
store.
there, right at Stony Acres Farm, yeah. So, but anyway, that's the other farm I can think of.
Well, there were cranberry bogs around.
Oh, there were tons of cranberry bogs around, yeah. Right across from Center Street in Brewster Park was all cranberry bogs. Up Briar Lane was all cranberry bogs. Where the Nevinses filled in was cranberry bogs. Yes, an acre of cranberry bogs.
But there weren't a lot of commercial things. There was the Mears store. There was Donald Doan's. There was Ken's.
Yes, you had Ken's Market
and Packet.
And you had Packets, and that basically was it.
So you had the coffee shop.
Oh yes, you had Mary and Andy's.
Okay.
Yes, Mary and Andy's was a lifesaver.
Any other eating establishments? Oh, the Chowder House.
The Chowder House, yeah, but it was never. It's more prominent today than I think it was then. Although when it was, as it came on as a bar, oh yeah, that was a place to go. We could slip in there, have a drink, but you see, the music was different. Oh, I wish I could remember her name. They had a woman who played a piano, and that was the music for the night. It wasn't what you have there today. And so we could go in, if some of us got off work, we'd go in, have a drink, and listen to her, and then go home. We usually wouldn't stay very long.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember her name. No, I can't. Just
young woman, old woman?
Older woman. She was a teacher somewhere, a music teacher somewhere. And she
wasn't Mrs. Wilson.
No.
No.
No, which Mrs. Wilson are you thinking?
Well, we talked to Dick Galligan, who was telling me that his sister-in-law Fran owned the Brewster Chowder House for a while, and sometimes her mother, who was Mrs. Wilson, would come in and substitute.
No.
But it was somebody.
This was in the bar.
Yeah, right.
The
woodshed.
In the woodshed. This was the woodshed.
Right. So there weren't really very many businesses.
No, there weren't.
Even going up and down the street, that's about it.
No, well, you had Gabby with her gas station.
Yeah.
You had Williams Garage. You had Phil Tubman when he took it over, and I'm trying to think. Herb Montgomery's dad had it before Phil, and I'm trying to think. I think it was Foster's before that, where
Foster
Cumberland
Square?
Farm.
Oh, right.
Cumberland Farm building was a gas station. And then the post office was there, and then originally it was Packett's Market, and then I don't know what went in there after Manny moved the store. Well, we had the Dairy Quick.
Oh.
Well, you had the Dairy Quick.
Lost that.
Well, you got me going down the road, so what you know as whatever the restaurant is there, and I laugh. They're going in and eating in a laundromat.
Yes, I know.
I mean, and that was Larry Doyle.
Oh, really?
That was Larry Doyle.
It's right there?
It was right. It's right where it is today.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Basically, competition to the Dairy Queen, which was in Orleans.
Yep.
And no, a lot of times once we get our licenses, if we wanted to go get something to eat, we either went to Kobe's,
Yep.
or we went down to Howard Johnson's
Oh,
in
right.
Orleans.
Right.
And for a while, that became a real routine for those of us who, say 11 o'clock at night, you want to do something, you go down. Johnny always had to have a burger and a frap, and I'd have Howard Johnson made a great chocolate cake, so I'd have some chocolate cake with chocolate ice cream and hot fudge sauce on it.
Whoa.
So, but that's what you do, and you go to Dairy Queen now and then, but Dairy Quick a lot of times, yeah.
Movies in Orleans?
Movies in Orleans, yes, but the theater was dying out. Yes, we did do that. Actually, I did movies in Orleans, Chatham, and Harwich.
Oh.
Wintertime, sometimes Dave and I would go to the store with Dad, and we'd go down to the theater in Harwich Port, and it might only be 6 of us sitting in the theater and watch a movie. So that was easier than going to Orleans, because somebody had to take you. And when we got our cars, yeah, occasionally we would go there. But one of the big things was the drive-in. Go to either the Dennis Drive-In or the Wellfleet Drive-In.
Yeah.
Or
Well, now tell us again, where was the Dennis Drive-In?
the Dennis Drive-In was on Holcomb Rock Road. And we got in trouble there one day.
Oh,
Well,
no.
we didn't get in trouble, but there was a whole carload of us, and we were on 134, and we stopped. I stopped because we thought we heard a funny noise, and I think it was David Harwood slipped under the car, so his feet are sticking out from under the car, and people went by us. They thought we'd run over. Somebody'd been run over. So when we just got back in the car and went to the drive-in, and we drove in to buy the ticket. I said, "Did you see anybody out on 134 that'd been run over?" We go, "No." So, yeah, you had the Dennis Drive-In, the Yarmouth Drive-In, and the Wellfleet Drive-In. Hyannis was there, but we never went
Too
that
far. Yeah.
No. My wife will kill me because I made her get out of the car and stand at attention at the Wellfleet Drive-In. I started dating Sue when I was in high school. We met through a common friend, and things just kept going, although it was horrible because I went to DY and she went to NASA.
Oh.
But I really got to, and I've thanked them when at reunions. A group of the girls, we had a Sadie Hawkins dance at DY, and a group of the girls who I was friends with and classmates with at DY made sure Sue knew about it,
Oh.
so she could invite me to the dance. So I think that's something that's kind of
Nice.
between the schools and the girls doing it,
Yeah.
because they'd known her, they'd gotten to know her a little bit because she was with me a lot, and so they knew who she was. So yeah, but I made her get out and stand at attention for the national anthem at the Wellfleet Drive-In. So.
And she stuck with you anyway.
Well, I can tell you some more stories that she stuck with me on. Yeah.
Tell me about boats.
Tell you about boats. Well, aside from the tugboats and I'm trying to think of the name that we called them, but the small sailing boats, and then of course sunfish came along. So you were sailing a sunfish. Well, my uncle, yeah.
Page.
Huh?
Page.
Page. Thank you, Di. My uncle Page was a designer, one of the original designers for the Boston Whaler. And then he also designed what they called the Trident, which was a totally fiberglass boat to compete with the sailfish, not the sunfish, the sailfish. But anyway, well, going back to the whaler, whalers had come out. Whalers were a 13-foot 6-inch boat that you could put a 40-horse motor on. Some of the older boys in Brewster Park had a boat and had started to water ski, and they had let us learn how to water ski behind their boat. Well, it became a project that you could go down to Dennis Marine, to Seward Harbor, and rent a boat for, I even think it was $40 a day.
That's
Yeah,
good money.
$40. You had to put the gas in it, and we'd go down. When we were driving, I'd drive down, drop somebody off to get the boat, and then go back, and they'd bring the boat up, and we'd ski all. We'd pick a day when the tide was going to be high most of the day, and we'd ski most of the day. If we didn't want to ski off the Brewster Park beach, we'd go down to Second Creek, which had a beautiful sweep in it, and you could go in and get up on your skis in nice smooth water, and then ski out the creek.
Which is Second Creek?
Quivet Creek.
Oh, Quivet. Okay.
Yeah. Which is now Cow's Pasture.
Right.
And everybody's there. When we were kids, there was nobody there. You could skinny dip, you could do anything, you wanted to. But we'd go in there and ski out of there for a long time.
Oh, that would be nice.
Because it was nice. You could just camp on the beach. And then Dave Harwood got a boat that had enough power for us, and he had a trailer. I had the Jeep. And so we would take David's boat up to Sheep's Pond, and we'd ski Sheep's Pond.
Oh,
And that
nice.
was beautiful because we'd ski right off the beach
So
there.
there's a boat ramp there now.
There was not that boat ramp, but there was a boat ramp there. They'd put one in. You could drive in, and back the boat in and put it in and ski, for the whole day there if you wanted to.
Sounds lovely.
Oh, it was a great time.
And no people around, or not much.
Very few people around. Very few people.
Yep.
So.
Well, we've gone over so many things. Are there things that really stand out in your mind as being different between then and now? Obviously, the number of people and the amount of traffic, but.
Well, there are a couple things that I had thought of. Is one, kids always looking for somebody to make something happen for them, whereas we made things happen for ourselves. I do want to tell you the story, and it's the greatness of being a small town. For I don't know how many years, the VFW would do a Christmas party for us, for all the kids in town, up in the auditorium at the town hall, the old town hall.
Right.
The real town hall. And they built a chimney, and Hollis Theall, who was a fairly good sized man, veteran, would come down that chimney in a Santa Claus suit.
Is that Anna Theall's husband?
No.
No. Okay.
No. So that was really unique. We used to have a Halloween party, and you could walk the street without worrying about anything, and we'd usually, Johnny Livesey, who lived down the West End, and Butchie Cash and myself would start maybe about Paynes Creek and start picking up goodies and wind up at the party, and that was usually at the elementary school.
Oh.
So you'd have a pretty good bag of
So really,
goodies.
one way or another, the whole town came together for these things. I mean, it was
Yes.
the kids, but it was the town,
Yeah, it
whole
was the town.
being part of it.
And the fact that I understand the world's changed, but I used to walk from our house down on the waterfront down to Lower Road and get on the bus. Nobody ever drove me down. Well, yeah, occasionally Dad did, but most of the time I walked down.
Yeah.
And I was there alone, or when David was there, and then Steve when we were in the same rotation.
Is this to go to elementary school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
I'm just trying to think of. There are so many things that I think.
Was it more open then?
Yes. You mean the landscape?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's overgrown a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why I laugh when we talk history.
Yes.
And you go, oh, wait a minute, we got to preserve this. You go, wait a minute, that wasn't even here 50 years ago.
Right. Right.
Well, I can tell you the story about cooking dinner on Freeman's Way.
On the road?
No, on the dirt road, yes. As a Boy Scout, marching through the woods from Nickerson and up onto Freeman's Way, and you didn't worry about it. So we set up a little campfire and cooked lunch.
Now, Freeman's Way was really a road in the woods.
Oh, yes. Yes. And, I know Henri wanted to honor Larry Doyle, but the real person that should be honored with that road is Phoebe Foster.
Yep.
Because that bridge has been called Phoebe's Folly, yet he had the foresight to tell the state to put a bridge there.
Even though it was a dirt road in the middle of the woods.
Even though it was a dirt road in the middle of the woods. Because he realized that was the only connection in Brewster, where you stayed in Brewster to get to the other side of Brewster.
Yeah.
And that road, that highway would have cut that off.
Yeah.
Of course, that also became a great place to drag race. I never drag raced, but I can tell you an ex-police chief that was really good out there. So.
Which one?
Which one? Yeah.
I think I might guess. But this is for history, Roy.
Well, this is history. I mean, we grew up here.
Yeah.
And we made do, and I think sometimes we made our own things to do.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one of the biggest things.
Well, if drag racing is the worst thing you did.
I didn't drag race. No. No. Because I never had a car that was worth drag racing.
Well, did you attract the police in any other way, other than driving over your friends and?
Well, yeah, Sabin Lord came us and threw us out of the cemetery one day, because we used to go over there and play capture the flag.
Oh. Because
from the park, you could go over and in the early evening, and as it started to get dusk, you could hide behind the headstones and everything, and you really could maneuver to play capture the flag. And I don't know who complained, but Sabin drove in there one day in his own car. In fact, this was before he was chief, because he had a 4 on his badge. I remember that.
There was no other policeman.
Well, they had auxiliary policemen.
Oh.
And in fact, he was technically an auxiliary, and I'm pretty sure he had a 4 on his badge. So they all had, because Rolly was an auxiliary policeman, Rolly Bassett. Roland Gallant was an auxiliary policeman, or they were, whatever the title was then, reserve. Because Roland Gallant did traffic. There's another interesting thing. Why did we have a police officer directing traffic at 124 and 6A in the 1950s and 60s, and we don't have one today? So I can name some of the others that were.
Well, is that when McGlashan was?
That was when McGlashan was chief. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so there were other helpers.
There were other helpers.
They were not
yes.
alone completely.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I would say when Sabin became chief, he then hired. There was at least one other permanent chief.
Okay.
I mean, permanent officer.
Yeah.
So.
I'd always thought there was just one at a time. So.
Well, there was only one. In other words, here you got to remember, Sabin comes by in his personal car.
Yeah.
At probably 7:30 at night, says, "Get the heck out of the cemetery. What do you don't to break anything up." and he was always he was a notorious mean guy.
Oh.
So he evidently had the duty that night. I don't know that he was patrolling or anything, but he had the duty.
Maybe someone just called to complain and he felt compelled to come.
Well, yeah, somebody at
I don't know, that doesn't sound like much of a criminal career.
no, no, I don't have much of a criminal career. So.
But there were elms along 6A.
Yes, there were. Dutch elm disease killed them.
Yep.
And everybody was really uptight, said, oh, trees will never grow back. Well, what's there now?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe not exactly the same, but still.
Well, you have had quite a career in Brewster as a fireman and fire chief.
Oh, don't even get started on
No,
that.
we're not. I'd like to come back and talk to you really about the history of the fire department and.
Okay, that would be fine.
And if you think of some other wonderful story, you can tell me that then.
Huh?
Tidbits.
Tidbits. Oh, yeah. Things will come to my mind after you leave.
It does. I know.
Because, yeah.
Sounds like a nice place to grow up.
I'd say it was a wonderful place to grow up. It really was. And you got out of it what you put into it.
Okay.
And so it, yeah, people say, well, gee whiz, because, I was a kid in high school that I took a stagecoach to school. So, but, I've got great friends from high school.
Yep.
And, I don't feel, and I don't want this to come out wrong, I don't feel that growing up in a small town held me back in any way.
Yeah.
So, I got to do a lot and enjoy a lot.
Yeah, in a way I think it's an advantage because you have the security of knowing everyone and, I don't know, maybe knowing what's expected of you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, what else have I got? Trying to think of what.
Well, we're going to run out of time.
Yeah, you're going to run out. Okay.
Thank you
Let
so
it run
much.
out.
Yes.
This has been really very interesting and a lot of fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that it helps and
Yeah,
gives a little
absolutely.
gives a little history to the town.